He said he was restoring an old house. But some homes remember too much. When I drove to Pierce Manor that winter night, the snow was falling like ashes. And by the gate, she was waiting. A woman in a pale coat, whispering through the storm. "You shouldn't be here. I thought I came to see my fiancé." But the house had other plans. Because sometimes love doesn't end with death, it just waits. Snow was falling so heavily that I could barely see the road ahead. Bar Harbor was asleep under a thick white blanket, the kind of silence that feels too heavy to be real. The road wound through endless pine trees, their branches bending under the weight of winter. My wipers struggled against the frost. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint light blinked. The gate to Daniel's house. My fiancé, Daniel Pierce, had called earlier that night. His voice had been strained, trembling in a way I'd never heard before. "Can you come tonight? There's something wrong, no explanation, just that." He wasn't the kind of man to sound frightened. Daniel was calm, rational, almost unnervingly composed, an architect who spent his life restoring broken things. Yet that night, his voice cracked on the word wrong. When I reached the gate, my headlights caught something, a figure standing in the snow. A woman motionless, wearing a pale coat that looked almost luminous against the dark. Her hair clung wet to her face. I rolled down the window just enough to call out, "Are you all right?" She didn't answer. She only turned her head slowly toward me. And when our eyes met, I forgot how to breathe. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her lips moved soundlessly, until I finally caught the words, "You shouldn't be here." Before I could react, she turned and slipped through the gate, disappearing into the storm. The house loomed behind her, an old Victorian manor, its upper windows glowing weakly in the snow. For the first time that night, I felt something close to dread. I should have turned around. But love, or maybe curiosity, pushed me forward. Her words echoed in my head as I walked up the path. The snow crunched under my boots, each step heavier than the last. The gate creaked shut behind me, and for a moment, I swore I could feel eyes watching from the windows. The plaque beside the door read, "Pierce Manor, 1892. Daniel's restoration project. When he told me about it months ago, he'd said it was his most personal work, a forgotten home from the 19th century he wanted to bring back to life. But looking at it now, I didn't see life. I saw a mausoleum. I knocked. The door opened after a moment, and Daniel stood there. He looked exhausted, pale, unshaven, eyes dark and sunken. "Daniel, what happened?" He didn't answer right away. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. I didn't know who else to call. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and ashes. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked unevenly, like it was counting down to something. "Who was that girl outside?" I asked. Daniel froze. His hand tightened around the edge of the door. "You saw her?" "Yes," I said. "She told me I shouldn't be here." He exhaled slowly, gaze drifting to the staircase. "She showed up 2 nights ago. Said someone was following her. I let her stay in the guest room. But when I woke up the next morning, she was gone. Window open, mud on the floor. The police came, but..." He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "They didn't find anyone." I felt the hair on my arms rise. "You think she came back?" Daniel didn't reply. His eyes stayed fixed on the top of the stairs. And then we both heard it. A faint creak from above. Once, twice, not the wind. Not the house settling. Footsteps. He looked at me, pale as the snow outside. "Her room's up there," he whispered. We climbed the stairs together, every step groaning beneath our feet. The air grew colder with each breath until I could see the fog of it hanging between us. At the end of the hallway, the guest room door stood half open. The curtain fluttered in the draft from a cracked window, and then she was there, standing by the window. Her hair was dripping wet, her coat still the same pale color as before. She turned her head toward us, eyes hollow yet burning with something like sorrow. "Who are you?" I asked. She didn't look at me. Her gaze fixed on Daniel. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "You said you'd come back." Daniel froze. What did you just say?" You left me there, she said softly. You promised you'd come back. But you never did. Daniel took a trembling step forward. No, that's not possible, he muttered. You can't be her. I stared at him. Daniel, what are you talking about? He turned toward me, his face ashen. Her name was Evelyn. She worked with me on a restoration project 3 years ago in Winter Harbor. There was an accident. Part of the roof collapsed. She didn't make it. I looked back at the girl, but she was gone. Only the curtain swayed, letting the moonlight in. She's dead? I whispered. He nodded, voice shaking. I saw her body, but I've dreamt of her ever since. She keeps saying the same thing, that she just wants to come home. Before I could respond, something clattered downstairs. We rushed back down, hearts pounding. The front door was still locked. The snow outside untouched, but on the floor before the fireplace lay a silver necklace. Its pendant glimmered faintly in the firelight. 2 letters were engraved on the back, E and D. The necklace lay cold and heavy in my hand. E and D, I murmured. Evelyn and Daniel. Daniel's voice was hollow. I gave it to her. The night before she died. I stared at him. Then how is it here? He ran a shaking hand through his hair. Because she never left. I felt my stomach twist. You mean she's haunting you? He looked up, eyes red. I mean, she's part of this house. He told me everything. About the fire in Winter Harbor, the night he'd tried to save her but failed. How he'd seen her hand move under the debris but couldn't reach her. How he'd been hearing her voice ever since. She said she wanted to come home, he whispered. So when I bought this place, I thought it would quiet her. But when I started restoring the upstairs, I found a sealed room behind one of the walls. There was an old diary inside. It belonged to another Evelyn Pierce, the last descendant of this family. She disappeared in 1892, and the handwriting... He looked at me. It was identical. The room seemed to close in around us. The air grew thick, heavy, alive. I stepped back and felt the floorboard crack beneath my foot. Something glinted inside. I crouched and pulled out an old silver ring engraved with the same letters. E and D. I could barely breathe. It's happening again, I said. Daniel's voice broke. She always comes back. Every lifetime. Every home. She finds me. He turned toward me, eyes wide. When I met you, I thought I'd escaped it. But she knew. That's why she's here now. The lights flickered. A cold wind surged through the room, extinguishing the fire. Then she appeared. Evelyn. Her figure wavered in the darkness, eyes black, lips trembling. You promised you'd come back, she whispered. You left me once. Don't leave me again. Daniel stepped forward. Evelyn, please. Her expression hardened. You chose her. The windows shattered. Wind howled through the room, scattering ash like black snow. I grabbed Daniel's hand. We have to go! But he shook his head. If I leave, she'll never rest. Then we'll both stay, I shouted. But not like this. Evelyn's voice rose into a scream, echoing off the walls. The air turned icy. Desperate, I tore the necklace from my hand and threw it into the fireplace. A blinding flash erupted. Evelyn shrieked, a sound like breaking glass, and then silence. When the smoke cleared, she was gone. Daniel was on his knees, tears streaking his face. She's free, he whispered. Finally. But in his eyes, something lingered. I woke to silence. The storm had passed. The air smelled of burnt wood and salt. Daniel sat by the fireplace, staring into the ashes. I joined him, touching his shoulder gently. Are you okay? He nodded slowly. For the first time in years, I can't hear her, but his voice sounded fragile, like something might break if I pushed too hard. We spent the morning cleaning. The house felt empty, hollow, as if something essential had been taken from it. I found faint handprints on the wall near the door, smudged and blackened, forming shaky letters that read, "He owes me a promise." When I showed Daniel, he turned away. She's still angry, he said quietly, but maybe she's learning to let go. Later, while I was gathering debris, I found a fragment of silver glinting in the dust, half of a pendant, burnt and cracked. Only one letter remained. I felt my throat tighten. "You burned the necklace," I said. Daniel's gaze darkened. "I thought I did. I wanted to believe she was gone." But as I looked around the room, the old portraits, the soot-stained walls, the faint hum in the air, I wasn't sure. That night, when the wind began to rise again, Daniel looked up and said, almost to himself, "She was never trying to haunt me. She just wanted me to keep my promise." By morning, the world outside was washed clean. The sky over Bar Harbor was pale gray and the sea looked like molten steel. Daniel and I packed our things in silence. He said he wanted to sell the house, to start over somewhere new. I didn't argue. I just wanted us both to leave before the snow melted and the ghosts woke again. But before we left, I found something. A faint glimmer near the hearth. I bent down and picked it up. A piece of metal, half melted, cold against my skin. A fragment of the necklace I didn't tell Daniel. Some secrets, I thought, are meant to stay buried. As we drove away, I looked back through the rearview mirror. Pierce Manor stood quiet among the pines, its windows dark. But in one of them, the upstairs window, I saw her, Evelyn, still, watching. I blinked, and she was gone. That night, in our Boston hotel, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, there was a soft tap-tap on the window. I opened it, expecting the wind, but there was a small envelope on the sill, old and singed. Inside, on a torn scrap of paper in looping, delicate handwriting, "I'm home now." I folded the note and tucked it away. Somewhere even Daniel wouldn't find it. The night stretched on, long and silent. But somewhere deep within that silence, I thought I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, steady, slow, not from outside. From within me.